Hello friends, today we're going to take a look at the basic line airbrush from AK Interactive. This brush features a 0.3mm nozzle and needle, allowing for total control whether you are spraying over wider areas or precision required when painting smaller details. The airbrush is presented in attractive and sturdy packaging that securely protects the airbrush and accessories during storage and shipping. Holding the airbrush in hand, one notices the overall weight of the airbrush. It feels sturdy and secure in your hand. Upon initial inspection, one can find the features that include a large gravity-fed paint cup, including a cap, multiple needle and trigger. All areas are very easily accessible, and a quick release attachment. The airbrush includes 2 needle caps, the traditional round style that is perfect for daily and overall use, and a second crown or cutout version that aids in the close detail painting, a cleaning tool, a wrench for help with the airbrush disassembly and cleaning, and finally a comprehensive part list. Adjustments as to how the brush can be individualized to your personal preference and or painting needs can be accomplished through the use of the trigger and needle adjustment mechanisms. This airbrush is a dual action brush, meaning that the user has control over both flow of the paint and the flow of the air through the operation lever or trigger. Pressing downward will allow the airflow to begin, while pulling backward on the trigger allows for the paint to flow. The further back the trigger is pulled, the greater the paint flow. There may be times when you might wish to limit the paint flow. The adjustment screw at the tail of the brush is used for this purpose. Tightening the screw will limit the pull or rear travel of the trigger, thus limiting the amount of paint flow at a certain predetermined level. The second adjustment area has to do with the needle. The screw or tightening screw found along the cutouts along either side of the brush allow for access to this area, holding the needle in place. By loosening this screw, this will allow for small adjustments of the needle back and forth, and this will adjust paint flow. Maintenance and cleaning of your brush is critical in the performance and long-term life of your brush. In most situations, cleaning will begin by first removing the excess or remaining paint from the paint cup. Further cleaning will most often require some disassembly of the airbrush. To remove and clean the needle, the tail portion of the airbrush can be unscrewed, exposing the needle and the tightening screw. By loosening the tightening screw, the needle may be removed for cleaning. Another primary cleaning area is the needle tip and nozzle area. Unscrewing the needle cap allows for easy cleaning of this section. Once these areas are clean, the airbrush is generally ready for the next use. On occasion, however, it may be necessary to further disassemble the airbrush for a heavier cleaning. These instances are rare but can be easily accomplished. The included part listing guide within the box is very helpful in this task as it illustrates the parts and their placement. Just make a note of how the brush is disassembled to help in your reassembly. The connection between the air supply and the airbrush, well, that is accomplished between a 1/8 air hose. In my case, I don't have a quick release on my air hose and can remove the adapter and simply screw the hose directly onto my airbrush. The next component of the airbrush is the air source itself. By far the most common is the use of a small air compressor. There is a lot of discussion around the proper pressure for airbrushing. For this, there really is no easy or correct answer. In general, a lower pressure level, say approximately 15 to 18 psi, can be helpful in doing precise or tight paint work. Increasing the pressure to say 22 to 28 psi is most likely the most common range used by modelers, as this allows for good control over a number of different painting situations. Now that we've unpacked and described the brush, it's time to paint. For this demonstration, I'll be using Generation 3 acrylics. For best results, regardless, a layer of primer is recommended. There are a number of different conditions and influences that will determine what is the best thinner to paint ratio that works for you. These conditions might include your location, whether or not you live in a humid or an arid environment, the type of paint work that you're doing, fine detail versus a base layer, and even sometimes the individual paint colors, the pigments themselves within the bottles can change the level of thinner needed. Often some testing and adjustment may be required before finding your ideal preference for any particular paint session. With regard to using the Generation 3 paints, a good starting point for thinner to paint ratio is 40 to 60, that being 40% thinner to 60% paint. If during your painting or the testing process you find yourself with spider webbing, well, that will mean that you have too high of a thinner to paint ratio. Adding a few drops of paint should help this situation. On the other hand, spitting or clogging likely indicates that additional thinner is required. When using the Generation 3 acrylic paints, the initial paint layer should be rather light, nearly transparent in some cases, as it is basically preparing the surface for additional paint layers. The distance of the airbrush to the subject, again, is a personal preference and can be determined by the type of painting intended. In general, A distance of approximately 2 to 3 inches or 6 to 10 centimeters is a good, comfortable distance for base painting. When painting small areas, tight camouflage schemes, or details, a closer distance to the subject may be necessary. The distance here might be as little as half an inch or 1 to 2 centimeters. In these situations, you might also consider switching from the round-shaped needle cap to the open crown-shaped needle cap and reducing your air pressure. I hope you've enjoyed this overview of using the AK Generation 3 paints using the AK Basic Line Dual Action Airbrush. I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you very much for watching.